So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first Master Series session of 2025. I'm really looking forward to today's session and a deep dive into Copilot Studio. But before we get started, if you're new here, welcome. The Power Platform Master Series is a virtual education series for the community that covers topics surrounding the Power Platform. And it's intended for Power Platform enthusiasts, and we try to offer a session once a month, but during the last quarter of 2024, we had sessions every couple of weeks, but we intend to try to have one at least once a month. Also, we almost always have these sessions as virtual Teams webinars, but have had in-person events in the past. If that's something that would benefit you, please do reach out directly and let me know. And then the intent is to both educate you and learn from you directly. And then finally, the Master Series has a website now. So this site is intended to be a one-stop shop for all things Power Platform, and we plan on maintaining and expanding its contents and capabilities. On the Master Series Hub, you will find links to upcoming sessions that we have, recordings and assets from previous sessions and general communications. I'll be uploading the recording from today's session along with Dewain's presentation to the Hub later this afternoon or very early tomorrow. So feel free to bookmark the site. Also, there's a link with a brief form that you can complete that will add you to communications that will come directly from the Master Series about any upcoming sessions or activities. So if you want to remain in the know, I recommend signing up, and you don't have to worry. You're not being added to any sort of general Microsoft marketing list. Since its inception, the Power Platform Master Series is really just intended for the community and really nothing more. So keep in mind that the Hub is a continuous work in progress and that the site will be updated regularly. So check back often. So today's session is pretty exciting. Copilot Studio continues to evolve and new features were recently announced at Microsoft Ignite. Our speaker today has a lot of influence with the product and is Microsoft's principal Copilot architect. He's also known as the Copilot Studio Dude on YouTube and provides a lot of regular and invaluable content. If you aren't subscribed to his channel just yet, please feel free to take the time to do so. I will get a link posted to the channel, posted the chat here pretty soon. And I'd also recommend following him on LinkedIn, just so that way you guys can remain in the know. As a reminder, everybody's microphone, you've got the ability to come off of mute. So if you've got a question and want to mention or mention anything that you're working on or bring stuff up with Dewain, feel free to come off of mute, and we want to have a good conversation. If you don't want to interrupt Dewain or want to keep the question a little bit more low key, feel free to post a question in the chat, and we've got a good army of folks that will do our best to address it. And if we can't, we'll certainly get back to you. So without further ado, I'm going to hand things over to Dewain. Dewain, thanks again for joining. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate you guys having me on. For those that have never met me before, I'm Dewain Robinson. I'm principal Copilot architect with Copilot Studio, and if you can't see the chat and don't see the link, or you want the direct links to LinkedIn, to X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, or whatever, you can scan this, and it also will take you to the YouTube channel as well. So feel free. I'll leave this here for just a second and go over kind of what we're going to talk about today. So today we're going to go into a bunch of different things. Specifically, we're going to look at some of the new capabilities. One is the generative orchestration stack. We're also going to go in and look at component collections and Azure AI search, not necessarily in that order, but just know that these are going to be some of the key topics that we talk about today. So I'm going to also do some demos of this stuff for you guys, for you to see it. And like we've said before, if you want some double click stuff, then most of what I'm going to show you would be able to get double clicks on it on that YouTube channel. All right, so first things first, if you don't know what Copilot Studio is, just know it's our end-to-end SaaS-based platform for building conversational agents for Microsoft. So it is our platform for all of this. We are SaaS as an implementation, which means you get everything you need from end to end to be able to build. We also, though, can integrate into PaaS-based implementation. So if you want to use Foundry or you want to use all these other different PaaS-based services, you can elect to say, I want my core to be all, primarily I'm using SaaS, but then I will call out where I need to our PaaS-based offerings inside of this. Now, the last thing to know is that Copilot Studio is also the platform that we use to extend first-party Copilot products for Microsoft. That's not a topic we'll discuss on this call here today, but there is an Ignite session that I did do that you'll be able to go check out. With that, let's talk about this. So this is why we're going to be focused on custom agents today. So again, we have Copilot agents. Copilot agents are extensibility. So this session today, we're going to be talking about custom agents, which is where I'm actually building my own custom agent. And we're going to be talking about both synchronous and asynchronous, and you're going to get to see them both today. So that's going to be really interesting. So if you haven't seen an autonomous agent work before, you're going to see it today. So the first thing that you need to know about custom agents as you start to play with them is that in Copilot Studio, we've got these major components that are part of it. So we have things that you can use to build the agent experience you're looking for. So that one of them is topics, where you can be in full control of the logic of how something is being handled. So all the way down to, I want the conversation to flow just like this. It can also be provided as like just a way for you to be able to come in and customize different implementations. So if you wanted to say you wanted a subset of knowledge that you wanted to use, you can use topics to do that. Now that leads me to knowledge. Knowledge is basically our SaaS-based RAG pattern. It allows you to be able to go in and build and use, like, think of it like I want to point it at websites or point it at data and be able to ground it in that so that you can answer questions. And we'll double click on all of this stuff. Actions is basically our conversational wrapper around APIs so that you can actually talk to an API like as if it's a human. We have an analytics suite that is on top of this as well, and you can even extend into extended data pipelines. Channels are going to be the way that the user is going to interface with this. And so you're going to start seeing channels being a way that if you wanted to interface through Teams, or you wanted through web chat, or you want to text it, or you want to call it on the phone, these are all concepts of channels. And then we have variables, and variables are very core in Copilot Studio, because this is really where you can store information for use again at a later date or at a later time. So these are really the core functions of Copilot Studio. And we're going to double click on a few of those today, just because we want to kind of explore some of the newer capabilities, or where you're seeing some more depth being added. Okay. So let's talk about knowledge a little bit more. So again, this is our SaaS-based RAG pattern. If you don't know what a RAG pattern is, it's retrieval augmented generation. If that doesn't tell you what that means, it's basically what ChatGPT is, but you do that over your data. So it's search over a bunch of data and then summarize a response based upon the context of the conversation. And so when you look at this, we've been able to do things like websites, SharePoint, OneDrive, and files, and being able to do like a file upload, Dataverse, and things of that nature. And what you're going to see is a good example of something that has been added just recently is, if you haven't played with this, I haven't done a video on it yet, but I'll probably do one, which is we have made it where file upload, if there are images within a documents that you have in file upload, you'll actually be able to answer questions over the image content that's inside of that. But another thing that we did is we launched Azure AI Search as a knowledge source. Now, this is a super big deal, because of the fact that if you're trying to do custom data and you're trying to get to your own custom data set and you don't want to use the indexer that's being used for search that is built into it, you want to build your own search so you can do your own vectorization, your own chunking strategy, all of those things, then you're going to be able to do this now. So the thing I wanted to do is let's start off with a quick demonstration of this because I feel like it's kind of cool to get to see some of this stuff at work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over here and just bear with me to make sure I get you to the right view here. Okay, and here I'll hit F11 to make it easier for you guys to see. All right, so while we're looking at this, what you're going to see here is this is the Azure portal. And what I did is created a resource group. And I just want to show you kind of the components that are in this. So you've got your search service, you've got a place that you need to store your data. And for the demo that I'm going to be doing here today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this. I'm going to use an Azure blob storage. And if you go into the storage browser here, what you're going to see is I've got these blob containers, and inside I've got one called sample data. And in this, if you, let me see if I can make this where you can see it a little better. Oh, it doesn't like me right now. So this is a Excel file you can see here that's been dropped in, and it's got a bunch of property data. Like I think of it like the way that I wanted to kind of demonstrate is think of it that I wanted to dump a whole bunch of data that I wanted to search over. And in this case, I wanted like property information for like a real estate type of scenario. And so now that I've done that, what I want to do is I want to jump over and let you see, oh, I guess I should go back and just let you see this part as well, which is, let's go back and look. We've got an Azure OpenAI model. This is what's being used to be able to create the vectorization. And then we've got the search service that's actually has imported this data and created the index and the vectorization of it against these services. So these pieces are going to be up in Azure, and these are PaaS-based implementations. So this is why when we were talking about it before, I said we are a SaaS, but now we can start implementing and using our other components as well that are PaaS-based. All right, so with that, let's jump over and let's take a look at an example. So over here, what you're going to see is I made this realtor assistant, and inside of this realtor assistant, you're going to see that I've put knowledge in here, and you'll see that what I did is I came in and I said add knowledge, and then under advanced, we watch the circle spin. You'll see Azure AI Search is now in here as a new preview item. Now, once you add it in, and we'll take a look at this one just so you can see, I give an explanation as to what this is. You'll see that it has a connection where it had to connect to the Azure AI Search implementation. You can see here, this is the vector index that it's using as part of it. And so with that being done like this, now we can ask questions over that Excel data, and you're going to see that it's going to give us a lot of really good information. So if you notice here, I just said, do you have any properties? And I think, oh, let's just refresh here. Do you have any properties for under $1 million? And what you're seeing here is it's going out and it's making the call to go check and see. And it came back and it said, yeah, there are some properties that are under $1 million that were in that data set that was in that Excel spreadsheet. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it I'm going to ask a follow-up question about one of the properties to get more data on it. And you're going to see it came back with this dissertation here about it. But what if I can even come back and say, put that in bullets? And it's going through and it's getting this information from the search through Azure AI Search over that Excel data that's been vectorized. and now it can answer questions. And because it's been vectorized in the search service, you're going to see that the quality of that is really, really superior to something where it's not in a vectorized store. And this is important because you can vectorize stuff by putting it in different locations, but the beauty of doing it this way is that you're in control of the vectorization in the search service and how that search service is working. If you want to take a search service and make it point at many different things and all the benefits of Azure AI search, you have that available to you without necessarily having to go build your own custom RAG pattern. So this is a very big feature that was added, and I think you guys are going to love it when you go play with it. So now let's jump back over to the presentation for a minute. And let's talk about those different components that we were looking at before. Okay, so the first one that we're going to look at, I want to talk about with you is variables. And I want to make sure you understand these different components, because as we start getting into talking about using the orchestrator or the generative orchestration, it's important to understand that each of these different things, like knowledge was one, variables are another. So now we have things where we can create variables and store data, and we can do that. And we have like environment level variables, we have system variables, we have custom variables that we want to create, and those can have different scopes. They can use this variable and it only exists for a topic. It can be this is globally used across the entire conversation. And then we even have cross session, where even when you end your session and you come back, you still have those variables stored. So these are really important for a conversational orchestration engine and a dialogue manager, which is what Copilot Studio is, to be able to really function at a level where you can control all of this and not everything is in the prompt. This is also something that you can't do if you don't have a dialogue manager or you don't have a conversational orchestrator. So this can't be done with an AI model by itself. So this is very much a differentiator between something Copilot Studio can do and something that you can't. And Azure AI Foundry, as an example, will not be able to do this. So then we get into custom topics. Again, this is something that a dialogue manager can do, but you can't do necessarily inside of just an AI model, for example. So when we look at this, a custom topic is a way where we can create a custom logic of how we want a conversation to work. Now, we can start this by creating a blank one. We can create one with Copilot. We'll actually create one for, yes, Copilot Studio has a Copilot that will actually create topics for you. So if you tell it you want to create a topic to order pizza, you can do that. And you can even go in and like click around and say, hey, give me 3 different ways of saying this or make this more professional. You can do all of those different things. So it's not just at creation. You can actually use it as a maker to be able to continue to evolve your Copilot. And then we have topics with inputs. And when we talk about topics with inputs, this is where I can make it where I can establish that these particular topics, just like an API have an input, the topic has an input. And so just like when I could say, generate a question to collect this piece of information for this topic, I don't have to in my topic say, ask this question, ask this question, ask this question. You can just define the input for your topic to be able to complete it, and it will generate and create a input for you. I've got a lot of videos on that. We won't double click on that, but it is a really cool concept as we go. Now, custom connectors are going to be important because of the fact that we have all these different connectors. And when you create these different connectors, and there's over 1,400 inside of the Power Platform already, but you can create your own. If you don't know what a connector is, it's basically like an open API definition or a Swagger file that's being used that you make available, and then it's available to your whole organization to be able to use to connect to different APIs. And the reason this is cool is because you can convert these into an action, which an action is where I just put a conversational wrapper around the API. and then I can talk to that like it's a person. Now we're going to see all of these things work, and I've got double click videos on all of this stuff. So if you see something here and you're like, I want to know more about that, just go look in that video library and you'll see tons of information on these. But again, an action, just like I talked about on a topic, they always have an input and an output. And so just any API is going to have, this is the information I need as an input, and here is what you're going to get out of it in return. And you can use actions as part of a topic. Like you can actually embed an action into a topic, or you can make an action stand on its own where it will just ask the questions. And you'll see this because we're going to do something with like a weather example in just a minute. Now we're getting into the important thing. And this is the innovation that we saw happen at this last conference at Ignite. And that is where we're seeing the planner or the generative orchestrator turn into a much more robust backend. And so there was a major update that came out to it. This is going to be released into general availability very shortly. I think there's like a few more bugs that we're trying to squash before we do it. But you should view that this is getting to pretty much production quality. And what this is doing is it is allowing a large language model to be able to route the conversation to figure out what you're talking about. And when I say this, it's being able to do it with the full context of the conversation and a full context understanding of all the different components that it has at its disposal. And so when we think about that, it means that it can understand that there is a RAG pattern that has certain type of information, an API that does certain activity, and maybe a custom topic that does something specific. And it knows when to use each of those different things. But it also can do something called entity extraction. And entity extraction is where I pull out the pieces of information that I need out of what you're talking about or the conversational context to input it into those inputs that we're talking about, so I don't have to ask you again. So if you say, I want to order a large pepperoni pizza, it knows I need to go to the pizza ordering one, and I can go ahead and fill in the fact that you want large, that you want a large one, you want a pepperoni one, and you want a pan pizza or something like that, right? So again, this is what entity extraction does. And you don't have to train this because we're using large language models. So traditionally you had to train all this stuff with like 5 different ways of saying it and stuff like that. And in this world, you don't have to do that. Now, that opens up this ability also for you to be able to do something called dynamic chaining. Dynamic chaining is where I can go in and I can say, go get information from this thing to pass into another thing to be able to answer your question without having to know that that is the case. It can just figure that out. And not only that, we added in the ability to route to knowledge. So when you ask a question, if you've got 6 different RAG patterns, we can know, go to this one for that, or go to a different one. And so when we look at all this different pieces of knowledge, we can say, this is, you can explain to the model what that piece of knowledge does and why it should be used. You can also say why it shouldn't be used, and it will figure out that that is the correct place to go. And we'll see this in action in just a second. And then keep in mind that the context of the conversation is being maintained throughout this entire thing. And that allows you to ask follow-up questions around what you're doing. And we also even have a trigger that when the process of figuring it all out is complete, that you can trigger something to some sort of process to take off once it's done. So with no further ado, I think we should get into a demo of this because it's easier to understand when you see it than it is for you to just talk about it. So let me jump back out here and let's jump over to a different tab. Okay. So in this world, what I want you to see is I want you to see the different things we talked about, the different pieces of this particular implementation. So you can see here, I've got some knowledge, I've got a company travel policy, I've got an employee handbook, I've got the Microsoft website, I've got an API for the weather that's been plugged in, and you'll see I have custom topics for one that's a create a PO and one that lets me approve a PO. And when you look at some of these things, like let's look at the company travel policy, you'll see that there's a description on this to explain to the model why you would use this. And you'll see the same thing happen whenever we go into something like create the PO. When I look at the create the PO, you can see here, I've given it a very descriptive way that I want it to work. So this allows the large language model to understand it. And you'll also see that what we talked about before is I've got this Power Automate process, and you can see it needs all of these pieces of information, but you see I'm not asking the questions. What I'm doing is I'm actually saying, here is the inputs, and I'm going in and I'm giving it an explanation right here on what each of these different inputs are. And then on top of that, I'm saying the output of this Power Automate process is going to give me this piece of information. And I've done that for multiple things so that way I can pass things back and forth. So let's look at our overview again. And then you'll see here we've got the weather. Again, this is an action that we're looking at. And with the action, you're going to see that it has a definition right here. It's got its inputs and what those inputs are, and natural language, what those are. And then, oh, here's what you're going to get back coming out of it, right? So beyond that, I haven't configured a lot, right? It's just these are different pieces or different tools that can be used to be able to do this. So now let's look at what's going to happen when we start talking to this. And what you're going to see is you can see this here. So if you don't see this pop up, you can click on it here. And that is the actual planner. And I should say that in order for this to work, you'll see orchestration right here has to be enabled. So now that we've done this and we have it enabled, I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to say, can I book a first-class ticket for my business trip? Now, when I ask this question, what I'm going to do is orchestrate to the correct piece of knowledge and answer the question. So yes, now we're not just orchestrating between different things that aren't knowledge. It's not fall back to a RAG pattern. It's orchestrate to the correct RAG pattern. And so you much higher fidelity in your responses, and you get higher quality responses because it knows the context of what you're talking about and why that document might be the right document to do this. Now, the other thing that you get is you get this concept of dynamic chaining that we talked about. But we don't just get dynamic chaining in like what you would say functions, like you've heard people talk about in the OpenAI world. We can actually do it where we can combine knowledge and go get something from knowledge and input it into an API so that way we can do something. So in this case, I'm going to say, what is the address to the Microsoft headquarters and what is the weather there? Now, by doing this, it's going to go to knowledge because it's like, I need to go find out where the Microsoft headquarters is. It figured it out by going to the knowledge source, and you'll even see, you can expand this and you can see it got it from Microsoft.com, and it pulled out that it was Redmond, Washington, passed it in, and there we got the weather response. So it did all of that behind the scenes. I didn't program it to do this. It just knows that's where to go to get that information, and this is where to go to get the other. So now this is great, but now let's do something more complex that we might want to do. So remember, we had those topics that we created. So I wanted to be able to create a PO. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say create a PO for Microsoft with terms of 90 days and shipped via FedEx. So doing this, I'm going to end up doing the entity extraction and the intent detection. I'm going to collect this, and you'll see here that the inputs are filled out, but there's a piece that's missing, right? And so now what I need to do is it's asking me how much the value is for this particular thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to drop in a different statement. I'm going to say the value is $250, but can you also change the terms to 120 days and ship via DHL instead? So I'm going to go backwards and to all of the things that it already knew, and I'm going to correct it all. And so we'll pass that on through and watch on the left-hand screen as it fixes all of the things that I asked it to, creates the PO for me, and goes through and makes it happen, okay? So now I want to show you one last part, and that is I'm going to show you that it actually can do even more. And because I can say things that are really complex to it now, like I can actually say to it, I need to create 2 POs for Microsoft, one for $750 and one for $1,500 that both ship DHL and have 60-day terms. Now watch what it's going to do. So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to say I need to create the POs. So it creates PO1, it creates PO2, it submits PO1 for a PO approval. And oh, by the way, did I mention if your PO's over, or you're requesting is over $1,000, then it needs to go and create a process to get an approval from a manager. And then here you go, you've got the status of the fact that it went and did that and said that it's waiting pending approval from your manager. So this is all super impactful that we can do this now. But let's go a little further and let's talk about something. And in order to be able to talk about this, I want to first ask you guys a question. And I know that there's a poll that can be posted, and I think the team's got it where they're going to make the poll available for you guys. But I want you to basically answer a question within this poll to let me know, do you understand the difference between an autonomous agent and Power Automate? Because a lot of people get confused by this, because Power Automate, when we're talking about all of this, what you're going to find is that Power Automate is going to be able to do business process automation, right? When I start talking about autonomous agents, where I'm going to be using an orchestration engine to be able to do all of do what you just saw, and you start thinking about an autonomous agent, it's going to be able to be triggered just like you trigger in Power Automate, but you're going to end up with a different experience. And a lot of people get confused as to why you would do one versus why you would do the other. And people are like, oh, well, all that is Power Automate. And I'm going to show you why it's not by giving you a demo. So do we have a collection of responses on this?
Just got it launched, Dwayne. Yep.
Okay, so if you guys can answer this for me, it'll be interesting to me to see if you guys understand this, because part of what we want to do is I want to be able to demystify this stuff for you guys today. So a lot of people get confused on this. So it looks like we got about 61% of you don't really necessarily know the difference between it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over and I'm going to show you what the difference is. Because what we're going to do is we're going to go into a demo. So okay, I messed up my slides, so don't worry, we'll just go straight to the demo. So let's jump over, and what I'm going to show, and by the way, outside of the CIO Summit, no one has ever seen this demo before. So I want you guys to feel that you got some good value today. So, so what I've got here is I've got an autonomous agent that's been built. And what this is, so think of it that what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, think of like this description as the job description for a person. So you tell a person when you hire them, this is what your job is, and this is how I want you to do your job, right? And then by doing this and you have this enabled, then what are you going to do? You're going to give that person the ability to have a bunch of tools that are at their disposal to do their job. And what you're going to do is then right here, we're going to say, in this case, I've got a bunch of different things like the deck plans of the ships for Holland America Cruise Lines. I've got general FAQs that they might have. I've got excursion guide and all of this. And I've got these cruise itinerary agents that are available for these particular years. Now, keep in mind that what I'm doing here is I'm building like this cruise booker thing. Well, I'm also in here, I've got actions. And so we talked about actions, but look at this. It's not one or two actions. I've got a bunch of different actions. I've got things that are go generate a booking link from Salesforce. I've got some booking history information. I've got CRM connections. I've got email. I've got all kinds of stuff. I've even got like to create a lead inside of all these different things. Then we also have, and we can have custom topics and all this, right? But now we're talking about triggers. And so just like a Power Automate flow can have a trigger that initiates the flow, I can also have an agent be triggered just like that. And you can add triggers really easily by coming in and picking ones that you want, and you're going to see more and more of these different triggers being added. In the case of this, the concept that we came up with is, imagine someone wanted to fill out a form. They were filling out that form to be able to say they were interested in getting the latest cruise specials, right? And so what I've done is I've already filled out the form so you don't have to watch it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rerun this back again. So I'm going to just say start testing. And so when someone fills out this form, what is this thing going to do? And we're going to watch it work behind the scenes here. So first thing it's going to do is the trigger flies in. Then it's going to go get the customer's booking history to get what are the things that they've booked in the past. It's going to go create and go through and do this CRM work. Then it's going to go to knowledge and go find what are good things for them and the information about it. Oh, sorry, my F11 doesn't like to work right here. And then after it did that, it went and created a booking link, a unique booking link in Salesforce for them to track the booking. Then what it did is it emailed them the information. So it created an email that's formatted that it sent back to that person who filled out the form with what are the best specials for them. And then it went back and updated the CRM record to say, hey, okay, I've actually created this for this particular person. And just to show you this on the back end, we should see right here that here's the email that it sent. Let me see if I can make it bigger for you. Oh, no, that's not the right one. But you can see it right here, that it created this email making the recommendation for that user and sent them the email back to have this. Now, it's totally possible that if I also had it monitor the mailbox, someone could come back and say, hey, actually, I'm more interested in sailing around Alaska this time. Do you have any specials for me for that? And you could go do the same thing and do the work and respond. And so this is the concept of a autonomous agent, and it makes it very different than what we've talked about in the past, where Power Automate is very much a flow. It's very defined. This is going to be something where I give it a bunch of tools, I give it instructions on how I want it to behave, and then how do I want to trigger that thing? What are all the ways that I want it to get the input to be able to do it? And yes, it could go ask somebody a question or go do something. This could be a longer running process, and it doesn't have to be through chat, because this was through a form and was interfacing with the user over email. So hopefully that kind of helps clear up some of the confusion that I know we've created in this place. Now, we're going to go into my last topic of the day, and the last topic I want to show you guys is we're going to talk about component collections. So component collections, these are really the thing that I really went to bat to be able to get this for everyone. So know that I'm really proud of this particular feature. And I would say that this feature is one of the most impactful features to makers for Copilot Studio in the product since generative AI started coming in. And the reason for this was one of the #1 feature requests that we have been asked for from all the way back in Power Virtual Agents Day. But we didn't just do it to make it work for the way that Power Virtual Agents was being asked for. We elevated it to be inclusive of all the new components that are inside of Copilot Studio. So what are component collections? It allows you to be able to create a collection or a package that, or a solution basically behind the scenes. You can create that with a subset of the actual Copilot or the agent that you've created. You can package that up and you can use that over and over and distribute it within your environment and be able to make it available. And you can include inside of them topics, actions, entities, knowledge. All of those are supported. So if you go in and create a knowledge item and you spend a lot of time building a good model description, you can make that available for your whole organization to use it without them having to build that all from scratch. The other thing is that because they are in a solution, and this is really making a solution dependent upon another solution, what you're getting is you can actually make it managed versus unmanaged. So I can have a development environment where I have a team of people who are working on a specific set of capabilities for my agent, for my like HR assistant. Maybe they're just working on just the knowledge development. And I can have a different team is working on some topics, and another team is working on another set of topics. And they can all work in their own development environments and create those in a managed way so that whenever they push it into the developer, the shared or the integration environment, I can make it where it's managed when it's there so that only the people who are creating are the ones that can modify it, but I can unify it into one solution. Think of this as almost like DLLs and the way that DLLs can be done. And these, since they're solution aware, you get all of the capabilities of it. You can export it, you can import, you can version, all of the things that you get with a solution. And this is really a massive, massive and important thing. This is why I cut 3 videos on this one just by itself, because it's so important with the way that it works. So let's go ahead and let's jump inside of our demo. So for this, let me go back over to here. And this is our PO creation item here. And remember that we had the weather that was right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to settings. I'm going to go to component collections, and you'll see that we have some here. Now, I've actually got one that was installed into here, but then I have others that are not. You can see where maybe I had HR-based components and IT-based components. And if I wanted to add them, I could just come in and just add them in. But let's do something more interesting, right? Let's make that weather one into one. So let's say that we wanted to make a weather V1. And I could just say this adds weather for today to your agent. Okay. Then over here on the solution, I'm just going to not select a solution because it'll automatically create one. But as you could see, there are different solutions that I have in this environment that I could add it to. Now we've got a list of everything. And like I said, you can get the topics, you can get knowledge, you can get entities, you can get actions. And so in this case, I want to grab this action and I want to put it in this. And I'm going to hit next and I'm going to hit create. And so now what is it doing? What it's doing now is it's creating a new solution. It's then moving the code from that solution, that it's moving that piece into its own solution. And it's creating a dependency between it so that now weather 1 is now available in the PO creation for dynamic chaining. But let's jump over to an empty agent. So I've got this one, which is agent 1. This is just so you didn't have to watch me create an empty one. And what you're going to see here is now we've got this empty agent that's sitting here, right? And I can come in here to settings. I can go to component collections. And I can look at this and say, okay, I don't have any of these. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add these entities from Office Space to it because, you know, I'm a big fan of Office Space. And you can see now agent 1 has it installed. But let's go ahead and add weather too. And now we've got it in both of these added. Now, if I come back, and sometimes I will tell you guys that you might have to hit F5 for a refresh just from a demo perspective. It will show up in auto refresh, but I like to just kick it for the demos to make it easier on you guys. So if I scroll down now, there it is. It's added that whole configuration for me. But not only that, if I go into the settings and I look at the entities, I now have these entities. And do you see these icons? This is telling you that that's from a collection. Now, if I go in and try to figure out whether the different flare types that I might want or edit the TPS reports, wait a minute, I can't do this because this one, when I put it in, it's managed. So I can't modify it. Whereas the difference between that and one that isn't managed would be like the weather. But if I take the weather, and one of the things in the weather that I tend to configure is I configure whether it uses, and here, let me take this out so that we can scroll all the way. You see here that we've got units, and I've got it set right now to imperial. If I change this to Celsius and I save it, I'm not just modifying it for this one. I'm modifying it for everyone because it is a managed component. It is a shared piece of code. So now when I go back in and I go back over to our PO dynamic chaining one that we were playing with before, which is where we created this originally, you're going to see that it should be, and if it's not, it's because of browser refresh or cache. But what you'll see is that if I come to inputs, that is now set to Celsius, right? Now, once you have it here, that means if you delete it, you're deleting it for everyone. So just be aware that there's a really important thing for you to think about development processes and application lifecycle management as you go forward. Now, if you accidentally go create something in a collection and you want to bring it back, you want to stop doing that, I'm going to show you quickly how you do it. So we're inside of this. Maybe I want to make that go away. You go in and you go into component collections. Now, if you come in here to this and you click on it, you're actually going to see another thing that's a cool feature, which is the new solution viewer that you can see. So here's the solution. Here's all the information. Here's what's inside of it, right? And so keep in mind that now I've created this and I can even come in here and I can say, okay, I want to go select all of this stuff and I want to move it out of the collection and I want to push it into this particular agent. So now I can say, okay, well, which agent do I want to push it into? Because these are the ones it's installed in. I'm going to go ahead and select this one. And what it's going to do now is it's going to do the opposite. It's going to move that code base back over. Now, that's not going to delete the component collection because we didn't want to do that part. And so here we go. So we're going to move it on over. Because once it goes through and it moves it, now what I have is I have weather v1, which is an empty component collection that's there. So you will go through and you'll delete the, you can delete it here as well. Like you can come up here and delete it. Just know that the thing that I would just make sure that you're aware of is that each of these things are their own thing. So when I delete this, you're going to see that now I'm deleting the component collection. And then you also just want to verify that your solution is gone as well, if you want to completely purge it back out. But this is a very, very valuable thing that you guys are going to find. And one thing just to note is that now in the library, so if you go down to the library, you can view all your component collections here. So if you want to come look at the entities for office space, you can come here, you can see them, and you can also add them to any of the agents that you want from this interface. You can search for things. You can also go over here and click quickly to go into the solution and see the solution viewer and such. And when it goes over, you'll see it pop up. But this is super powerful for you guys. And I think when you think about this, well, why is it so powerful? It's because not only are you going to have departmental separation and the ability to have different developers doing different things, it gives you the ability, if you're a partner, you can go and create something and publish it as a managed asset and use it as part of a way for a repackaged solution that you can give to people that they can just bring right into their existing copilots. It is literally going to give you this ability to monetize this. It allows COEs to be able to establish baselines for what all of their implementations are. And yes, you can build templates inside of Copilot Studio, but the problem with templates was that we couldn't give you the components and you couldn't update it. Now you can actually build a template and then you can update the components as part of the template and have different components in your template that are being developed by other people. So again, these are super, super powerful, like really high-end things that you're going to be able to do. And as you can see here, like I told you, just that last step for cleaning up my weather is I'm just going to go delete the actual solution so that way I've gotten everything taken care of. You can delete the solution and it will get the component collection that's inside of it if you do that. But just be aware, the reason I walked at that path is for you to see that each of those stages you might want to do in that way, because when you delete it all, it would delete it for everyone. So if I deleted weather, if it was installed in 6 different agents, it would update it everywhere. But I could create a weather and a weather v2, and I could have some people on weather v1 and some people on weather v2, and you can choose as the maker when you want to go to the different one. So this is why this is so powerful. So with that, I wanted to flip back over to the presentation for just a second, and I just wanted to say thank you for joining today. Hopefully, through this session, you've gotten a lot of good value. I hope that, if you want to go and scan that's the same QR code, feel free to go check that out. And if you guys have ideas for videos or something like that, feel free to go post that up on LinkedIn and talk to me on that or in the notes or the comments. I do look at those things and I try my best to cover them, but this is, just to be clear, that's kind of a side gig for me. So I tend to stay busy in my day job as well. But thanks for the time today, and I'll hand it back over to Jeffrey.
Yeah, Dewain, thanks so much. I'll kind of, we've got 5 minutes left, give or take. So I know we've had a lot of good questions in the chat. I think a lot of them have been addressed, but if there's any last minute questions for Dewain or the team, I'll go ahead and hand the floor over to everybody to come off of mute and go ahead and ask those questions.
Jeff, if I may throw one out there for the crowd. The question came up by a number of different folks there at the end. Dewain, there's a lot of questions about a lot of excitement about the component feature, but it was clear, is that per environment? Does the component have to be in the environment when sharing? I assume all that's yes, but wanted to let you address that directly.
Yeah, so the best way for you to think about this is it follows the exact same rules of a solution. If you fundamentally can understand what a solution is, component collections is really nothing more than allowing you to have a Copilot Studio implementation of an agent that has a solution that has a dependency on another solution. So if you think of it that it's just solution dependency for the runtime, it makes a lot more sense in your head. So you can't have a solution that spans multiple environments. So therefore, yes, you need to have different environments. And this is why personal developer environments for development of this is something I would highly recommend that you think about, because I would want to develop it as a person in a personal developer environment and then publish it into like an integration environment. And so just be aware that that's kind of the concept.
And it's moved as a solution itself as well, right?
Correct. And if I want to make it managed, you would have to export it as managed, right? And when you export it as managed, you would import it into your integration environment, but it wouldn't be modifiable in that environment at all. You would have to modify it, and then you would, just like you do today, whenever you have a new version, you can just version release up to it. If you're trying to have, like, you wanted a weather v1 and a weather v2, then what you would want to do is you would want to have two different solutions, one for v1 and one for v2. If you wanted them to coexist for a period of time, you wouldn't just version the solution. So you'd basically copy it.
Well, that sounds like a nightmare in and of itself. But yeah, get that well said. So I think for everybody, yeah, think of the component as another thing that you would put in a solution file that you could move from environment to environment.
Can I ask a question, piggyback off that topic?
Well, just to be clear, a component collection is a solution. It is a solution that is being used, that is being sold, that another solution is dependent upon that solution.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Think of it as a sub-solution.
Can I ask a question?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Great. Duane, first of all, a great demo. I love it. My brain's firing right now to know all the possibilities. I do have a question regarding this whole component management aspect of it. Does Microsoft offer some layer on some kind of governance model on top of it that allow us to catalog these components and make a discovery of these components, of what they do, what they can use for end users much easier?
Yeah, so when I was showing you in the library that's on the left-hand side, you can go in and you can, at the top it says component collections. Remember, I filtered down to that. That gives you a library of all of the ones that have been published into your environment. So whoever owns the environment installs this. Think of it, if you go get the solution that has component collections in it, because I could have 6 component collections in one solution, right?
Sure.
And if I install that solution into your environment, then it becomes available to everyone in the library.
And is it possible to add some additional metadata, attributes, stuff like that, to make it easier for people to understand how to search for these components?
Yeah, I think it's already has a search built into it that you can go and see.
Okay.
And such. But if there's interest in where you see a gap on it and things of that nature, I think that's one thing that I would really like to get more information on from you guys. But I'm going back, and now you've asked me this, so I'm going to go. I was going back and looking. I'm pretty sure that in the library that it has a search feature in the library, but know that that's also where all of the this is going to be, and I'm going to still the screen for just 1 second again. Sorry.
You're fine.
But if you notice here, because the library is also going to have like connectors, your component collections, your Dataverse things, and everything, what's in here. And you can hit add item and you can add a whole bunch of other things. But if you notice, I can come in here and filter, and you can also search. But when you're inside of one, like if I go into the entities for office space and everything, you have a description and a name and all this. So I believe you will be able to do this. But if there's something where you're like, hey, I'd like to put some metadata tags or something like that, I don't think we do that today. But what I would say is I don't think it wouldn't be hard for us to do, because all of this stuff is just stored in Dataverse.
Exactly. So I'm thinking, use cases like if I create a bunch of components related to how you interact with HR, systems. Potentially, I want to put a metadata around like HR system or HR whatever top components, right? So then it's easier for them to search for that.
And then you probably want to have like filters on that.
Exactly.
That you
exactly.
Yep.
That's
I'll bring that up to the team and let them know. But absolutely, I think the ask is definitely not an unattainable ask. I don't think it's in the scope of the initial release,
right?
But absolutely you can, and I think you can solve it in the interim as long as you come up with a naming scheme for how you're going to name them. You should be able to do it through that in a rudimentary way, but I totally get what you're asking for, and I think it's totally doable.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bing. All right, we'll take one more question from Sai, and then we'll go ahead and wrap things up.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Hey, this question is about structured output from the chatbot. What is the preferred approach? Is it the output section that you just showed earlier? Is that how? Because I've been doing a lot of prompt engineering to get this output the way I want it, but I was wondering if especially if you're having multiple agents and you want a structured output to communicate with each other. I was wondering how that whole flow is designed.
Yeah. So to get that to work, so let me tell you the hardest part of the thing that you saw me demonstrate, and it's why it's so important that here I'll show you on the screen here. It's so important that this existed, right? This viewer that allowed you to see what it was doing, because it's exactly what you're saying. Like the hard part was figuring out, oh, I'm sorry, you can't see what I didn't share. Okay, so this right here, when you see this part, which was the activity map, that you could see it doing what it was doing, this is really important for debugging for you, Sai, because when you go in and you want to get it working, to get it working the way you want it, so that it would automatically kick off the right thing, and why is that not working, or I need it to format in a certain way. To your point, there's two different sides of it, right? So in the topic piece, let me just show you really quick that in the create PO, it was really important that I spent some time on this, which is explaining this and using common terminology here on the output of what I was getting. And then on the other side, when I wanted it to go into the approval process to make the chain work, you have to explain it here. So hold on, let me flip back really quick just so you can see this. So on the create, I had to be clear right here. Never ask, or right here. It's like it says, it's basically saying after, or here it is, always trigger the PO approval topic. And then I say down here, which it used to ask me all the time, and I said never ask, right? So this is how you get the behavior to kick it back off. Now the problem is on the chain, you needed to have the output defined, and then on the other side of it, on the approved PO, you needed to have over here in details, you needed to do some work. One, on the model description, make sure this is good, that it understands what it's doing here. And then on your input, you will see that I had to make sure that I use the same kind of language for it to understand right here. I think it's this one, the PO number, right? So that it would push that on in. So this is why it was super important to have that that viewer, so that you could see what the large language model was thinking when it was doing the orchestration. Because if you don't have that, you don't know. I know that there is that thumbs up and thumbs down as a maker, so that you can give us an indication if it's doing what you expected or it's not. Like you can actually give feedback to us through the interface if it kicks off and it's not doing something right. But this is what I would tell you is the hardest part to get dynamic chaining working, is you just need to make sure that you get those inputs and those outputs going back and forth. If you get it working in one scenario, it pretty much works in all scenarios. So you just need to make sure you test your chain and that your chain works. And then what you will find is your chain will always work. If it works one time, it should pretty much work every single time.
Got it.
So does that make sense?
No, you did. Yeah. Just a quick follow-up to that. So how do the ChatGPT, they released the latest versions, which is structured output. Does it tap into the latest output structures, or is it just
not yet, but it will. Not yet, but it will, because what happens is once they release it, we will incorporate it into the SaaS, but it'll take a little while for us to do it, because we have to go through like responsible AI and make sure that it's the commoditized implementation of it meets a certain quality bar. That's why the preview is still at preview right now, is we, through some testing, we hit some bugs that we're trying to work on. There's a few hallucination things and a security bug that we're working on. But the incorporation of that is something that we're looking at bringing in. It'll happen as part of one of our releases. So just know that if you guys don't know about this URL, I'm going to put it in the chat. Let me make sure that I've got it right here. But this is probably one of the best things for you to go follow, because this. Okay, I can get to the chat now. Here we go. This URL. This will be the URL that you can use to see what has recently been released inside of Copilot Studio. So this is the best thing that you have, the closest thing you have to release notes for Copilot Studio. So likely you would see us post something there about this when it's added in.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no worries.
Perfect. Dewain, thank you so much. This has been very, very informative, and I know our customers appreciate it greatly. For those that are kind of still on the line, I've got one last question to kind of ask the group. We are getting ourselves kind of going and some topics together for the following year. As I mentioned, of course, this is the first session of 2025. So what topics are you looking forward to us covering this year? Feel free to check them all or select your favorite one. And I'll continue to chase down speakers and work on the right topics for you guys to get the most value out of the Master Series sessions. So again, thanks again for joining. Dewain, once again, thank you so much. It sounds like there's a lot of good follow-up questions. So if we've got anything, I know you and I have a regularly scheduled one-on-one, so I'll bring some stuff your way
No worries.
if necessary. But with that being said, I know we're almost 10 minutes over, so thanks for those that are hanging on. I will be posting a copy of the recording to this session and along with Dwayne's slides to the Master Series Hub either later today or early tomorrow morning. Link is a couple times further up into the chat, but I'll be happy to post it here again for everyone. So thanks again for joining, folks.